Well, Elaine, we came to this museum expecting to find something about some of the greatest food that Chinese people have made in this world. But it turned out when we go deeper, we found something that revealed in this museum, which is much deeper and, I have to say, much darker in history. Nearly 3 dozen chefs, some from China, some born in America, but all with one thing in common, the love of food.
For us, it makes a lot of sense because, food is all about getting people together. And we decided to bring 33 chefs together from across the country. And then we tried to imagine what it would be like if they were having a conversation.
A new exhibit at the Museum of Chinese in America is called Sour, Sweet, Bitter, Spicy. It's not just describing food, but also describing the lives of Chinese Americans.
For many Chinese immigrants to this country and possibly to other countries, the Chinese phrase 吃苦, eating bitterness, is very prevalent. And if someone were to say that to someone in a Chinese culture, 我们现在就吃苦, let's just eat some bitterness now, because the hope is that the future is going to be better. Prior generations have eaten the bitterness, not just your parents or your grandparents, but all those generations of people who have fought discrimination.
The museum is not just exhibiting food, it's also preserving history. This is a Chinatown general store. Here, people could buy tea, get help with translation, and they could even send mail back home. Chinatowns began to rise in the late 1800s, in part because of a law called the Chinese Exclusion Act. It limited immigration into the U.S. based on ethnicity and remained in effect until 1943. Museum curator Herb Tam says the Chinese Exclusion Act is not really taught in American schools.
It's hard not to think of ourselves as victims and it's hard not to keep, talking about these things. And I think what we found is it's very necessary to keep emphasizing there's this history of sort of institutional racism that Chinese in America have had to face, and that but also that there's this incredible culture that has grown out of this bitterness and this struggle.
As some Chinese Americans were attacked, even murdered, many Chinese families remained separated for the rest of their lives. Those who stayed gradually formed Chinatown communities, helping them feel safe and connected.
The current executive orders have been placed on 7 countries, on refugees and other citizens who are trying to come into this country, is very reminiscent of what happened in the late part of the 19th century against the Chinese. The work of the museum is so important. What if the Chinese Exclusion Act had been in our history books? What if we had learned about the Exclusion Act and then the aftermath and the burden of that legacy? If our voice was a little bit stronger, would we not see what we're seeing today?
Earlier this year, the museum began asking visitors what they thought about the future of America. The question doesn't mention US President Donald Trump, but almost every answer posted does. Many believe what happened to the Chinese could serve as food for thought about what's happening today. The exhibition started last October, and it was originally planned to end this March. But because of the huge and growing popularity of the exhibition here in New York City, it decided to extend the exhibition until September the 10th of this year. Elaine.
Peng, you showed us the wall of comments about America's future and how almost every posting mentioned Donald Trump. What are people saying about him?
Well, here we are standing at the center of this museum, and if we walk through this museum, we can see that here is the place where they have displayed a lot of achievement of the Chinese Americans and also the Chinese people here, and also some of the history of the relations between Chinese and Americans and also Chinese Americans. And here is the wall we're talking about. This is at the end of the museum, and we can see that they have asked a very simple and general question about how they feel about America's future. but it turned out many of them were actually talking about Donald Trump's travel ban on Muslims. Here we can take some of them, for example, this one. It says that I am fearful for America because there is a push for a change in a backward direction since Trump's inauguration. Definitely is talking about Donald Trump's travel ban on the Muslim people. And also here we have seen some others saying that I am fearful of America and for America for the reason that cannot be explained. He says, I do not want the progress of my Chinese grandparents to go all to the waste. So it seems that fearful and worry are the key words for many of the people here, but there are also words saying that I am hopeful for the future of America, saying that because we have some of the best people living in the US and can overcome all the challenges that is happening here. So it seems that a simple question about America's future and plus everything about the history of Chinese American being excluded from this country has shown some wide consensus in this country about the opposition to Donald Trump's policy. And also, we have seen that this is a mixed message from people all across the country. Some are fearful, some are worrying, but some are also trying to have some hope of this country. Back to you, Elaine.
All right, Han Peng live for us in New York.